Hey everybody, and thank you for tuning into this video. So now we are ready to move on to the next part of the motion matching node that I have researched and prepared for y'all today. So we are now going to get into the steering node within the Game Animation Sample Project motion matching node. So this one should hopefully be a relatively short video compared to the other one that I did where it's like an hour and whatnot, but this one should be pretty smooth. So to kind of recap what we went over in the previous one is that we took a look at how basically we have the start of our motion matching node that is similar to our state machines on how they start off and retrieve their input to then get locomotion states and stuff like that, and then converting it from the local area basically around our character to a component, more of a component overlay and stuff like that, to where it then goes into orientation warping to dynamically adjust our character's orientation based on movement direction, and then how we basically get node context data from the local blend stack input that we get from here, and then we get the current animation that's playing at that time, as well as the playback time or the time that is being played, and then passing it into our get curve value from animation. Believe it or not, I still have not found this, so I can only assume that this is not really a default thing. I think when we start actually putting when we put in the animation warping and stuff like that, I believe this just came available. Either that or it could be something specific with the animations, one of the two. I'm not sure. I still have not found it, so I apologize for that, guys. But then lastly, we get our non-zero velocity to give it our locomotion direction, to be able to better orient our character's movement, body, whatever, so we don't get like weird blends. So then after that, kind of what I mentioned with the reset root transform, if y'all remember from the previous video, is that this just kind of helps reset our root transform to kind of put it back into, or put it back together essentially, where it just kind of clears like any of the previous root motion stuff or any of the offsets that we provided, stuff like that. So it basically like re-centers, re-encapsulates everything back to default in order to, not have any sort of weird glitchiness or clippings, stuff like that, right? So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the steering. So or at least the first steering node, because I have nice notes for y'all, as well as the discussion on what the steering node actually does. So now that I've briefly went over the reset root transform, I am going to add my little note here just to encapsulate it for y'all. And now let's go in and take a brief look at the first function, which is the get desired facing that you'll see off of the steering, because the first one does utilize two functions. It utilizes enable steering and it utilizes get desired facing. So first thing we are going to do is just create that real quick. So we're going to create a new function and we're going to call it get desired. Oop, I like how the autosave messed that up for me. Get desired facing, because what this is going to be used as, just a quick brief overview, is is going to be basically our character's rotation. And that's basically what it's going to be. And like in simple terms, I got grander notes for it so I can give y'all better synopsis of what it does. But this is what is being used for the orientation part if you've ever looked at the steering node. So the first thing that we're going to grab is from our variables, we're going to go into trajectory, and we're actually going to get the trajectory variable here. Because what we're trying to do with the trajectory node, and while we're getting it first, is that we are trying to basically get the representation or the query data, or the planned query stuff that we had set into our trajectory, to where it will basically represent the predicted path the character will follow, in the future. Because like, as you saw, we've set, the variables in the generate trajectory of like basically future points in time, especially with how we got future velocity, how it makes its predictions, where it got like the last 30 movements to then predict the next 15 with like every 0.1 second, stuff like that. So we're getting the future predicted path data in order to pass it through and get what our desired facing will be, like, you know, 1 animation in the future, 2 animations, 15 animations in the future, stuff like that. So that's basically why we are putting it in here. So let's go ahead and put my notes there. And then next, what we are going to do is off of the trajectory, we are going to get trajectory sample at time, and we're going to set the time for 0.5 seconds. So what this is essentially doing is we are trying to retrieve a specific sample or trajectory sample, you know, when it does its predictions, you know, from the trajectory data at this given point in time, so 0.5 seconds into the future. So basically it is providing foresight into where the character will be headed. So that's what we're trying to obtain with here, so that way we can correct our character's facing when we are moving in whichever direction. So that's what that is essentially doing in here. And then the next thing we will be doing is for our outsampling, we are going to break this because we only want one output, which is the facing. So we are going to hide unconnected pins and then just recheck facing because we only want the facing, hence, you know, the get desired facing function. And then we are going to then make a return node and get our future facing, you know, from the trajectory sample of the time from our pose search query data. So that is basically what we are doing there. So let me go ahead and move this around. So it is literally that simple that, you know, it's literally just that simple for this. So luckily there wasn't, you know, too big of a function and stuff like that, like how we've been working on throughout the project. So that's why that's why I said earlier where I'm really hoping that this is going to be a relatively short video, because it didn't really take me that long to decipher the secrets, really. It's the only reason it even took me so long was just because I've been dealing with a bunch of stuff lately. So that's why I also want to apologize to you guys on that. So, but to quickly go over this, so when we look at the dev notes for this, which I have pulled up on my other screen, is that, you know, this function gives the steering node a target rotation. This target is calculated using the future facing direction from the predicted trajectory. This allows the steering node to rotate toward a future direction rather than always steering toward the current actor rotation, meaning like at its point in time, it's going to get what it should be in like 0.5 seconds into the future. So, you know, in doing that though, we can prevent, you know, this from causing our character to, you know, lag too far behind. We can prevent that, or at least, you know, reduce that risk. So, you know, in simple terms, what does it really do is that we just predict where the character will be facing shortly and provides that direction as a target for steering. Why this is important: by aiming for a future direction, the character's rotation feels more natural and less reactive, preventing laggy or delayed turning. So, you know, for such a simple looking function, it is actually very important when being used with steering. So this has kind of opened my eyes to utilizing this within the first 60 minutes of motion matching. When I do that series for you guys, I'm only going to go over or not only go over, but I will just be going over your first 60 minutes. We're going to go through that together and just do the basic stuff, and then we'll add on to that to try to make a complete game. So far, there's a lot of kinks that I'm trying to work out, like figuring out how to fix my left hand IK to the gun. I am having issues with that. The shooting part, not really an issue or anything. It's just more or less like the hand IK that's really messing with me. So hopefully I can do that. But if you guys did see my other video where I got Combat Fury, I do plan on making a tutorial series on that. So we're going to tack on stuff that we can to your first 60 minutes, you know, when I have the time to do that. But I do also want to focus on getting a Combat Fury tutorial out for you guys and integrating that within GASP. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But other than that, guys, we do have that completed, so let's go ahead and we can close out of this. Well, first we do need to make an adjustment. We do have to, of course, make it pure and thread safe. I believe it was thread safe over here. Yes, it was. So we definitely got that, and let's go ahead and put the get desired facing in its own category called steering, just like how the game animation sample project has it. So now that we got that, we can go ahead and close this, and I guess let's go ahead and work on the next one, which is also very simple. I really didn't have to make any additional notes for this. It's just very simple because it's going to be a Boolean value. So we're just getting true or false. So we are going to make the enable steering function just like that. And this function is also, let's just go ahead and do that, pure and thread safe. And let's add it into steering real quick, and then let's make it. So we are going to close up trajectory, and we're going to get the essential, no, it should be states, because what we want out of here is we want to grab our movement mode and we want to grab our movement state. So what we are doing is off of our movement state, we're going to grab an equals enum, and we are going to copy this and put it down here because both of these are going to be an equals enum. However, the two enums that we are trying to check for is to see if we are either moving, so that way it helps, you know, with enabling our get desired facing, stuff like that. So this steering will only activate if it's moving, or, which we're going to get an or Boolean, or if we are in the air. So I know in the air could be a bit confusing, but basically that's why we have the or there, because we want to make sure, because when we're moving, technically we are already kind of counting elsewhere that we are moving on the ground in a sense. But just in general, what we're trying to capture is that we're just moving, so that way we can enable the steering to properly face our character wherever we need to 0.5 seconds into the future, right? So it's more smooth movement. But then we also want to check if we are also in the air, so that way we can also get proper future facing, or proper, you know, predicted facing, you know, if we are in the air. So that's what we're trying to do there. So that's pretty much all it is to this one, guys. So let's go ahead and put that in for a return value. And then I'm going to copy the dev notes in here. And let me scale this real quick, just that way we can get that fixed. So we're going to put that there, move that in, move that over a little bit. So just to go over the dev notes real quick, is that this function determines if root motion from the animations can be steered by checking if the character is moving or in the air. This prevents idle animations from getting steered, which could cause sliding. So that is also another thing, is we don't want any sort of like clipping, sliding, stuff like that. So that's why we're checking for either of just these two, either the mode or the state. So go ahead and compile that, guys, and basically, essentially, we are officially done with making functions, I believe, unless there's another hidden one that I'm not familiar with somewhere. But other than that, all I know is that we are officially done with functions. So let's go ahead and close this down and get into the big boy mess, or at least part 2 of our big boy mess. So, or big boy, girl, whatever mess. So let's go ahead and get our steering node, which is right here under skeletal controls. And don't worry, we are going to go over all of this. However, you know, alpha should be pretty, you know, like well known by now because of how we've been setting up other stuff. It's just like how, you know, it enables steering, or how it just, you know, makes it work essentially. However, with what they have it in here, we have to make it a bool first. So let's just go ahead and change that. So, you know, in order to make it a bool, go ahead into the details, and we're going to go all the way down to alpha, and where you see alpha input type, let's go ahead and change that drop down to a Boolean value. And this is where we are going to pin that enable steering. So go ahead and throw that in there, and then we essentially have that for us. So before I do any sort of connections, let's go ahead and go over this briefly. So let me pull up my notes. So let me go over my simple note for it real quick. Or no, I didn't have a simple note, my bad. I just had the dev note up. So, all right. So since we have the get desired steering, we have the other stuff. So with how the steering is working. So let me find that. I know I had it. Here we go. So with steering, right? Steering is an experimental node designed to apply additional rotation to the animation's root motion. Its primary goal is to steer the character's movement towards a target orientation, which is what this is, which is the rotation. So it's essentially this right here, and that's where we're going to be plugging in the get desired facing here in just a second. So here's what this whole node entails, right? So we have 3 key points with this node. Is that we have additional rotation as the first key point. So beyond the basic orientation adjustments, like those from orientation warping that we did, earlier right here, steering adds another layer of rotation to better align the character's movement with desired directions, which is, off of here, the get desired facing. So I am going to drag that out for the moment because we are going to connect it. Then the second point is the root motion consumption. So this node, the steering node, consumes root motion data that we feed into it along, this pipeline, which is then handled by the offset root bone later down our line. So if we go into the anim graph, as it feeds down this pipeline and goes through everything else, eventually it will feed that orientation, warping, and the steering into this offset root bone. So with that, this basically refers, in doing that, it kind of refers to the movement that originates from the animation itself as opposed to being driven by gameplay code or physics. So it just essentially, what it ended up being was just it helps better the movement in a sense, especially when it feeds into the offset root bone. So basically, that's just kind of the simple part of it. It kind of confused me at first when I had that note settled down too when I was doing research on it. But then the next part is, or the last key point to move on to this next subject, is target orientation. Like I said, so basically here, steering uses a target rotation to determine how the character should turn, ensuring smoother and more predictive turning behavior. So when kind of getting some simple points from the developer's notes that they left, is that basically the dev indicates that the steering is a work in progress. So if we actually move over to, let me move over the GASP, is that it is an experimental node designed to apply additional rotation to the animation's root motion. Its primary goal is to steer the character's movement towards the target orientation, just like I mentioned earlier. But like I said, like I was trying to say with the dev notes that they left behind, is that it is a work in progress because it does have some unwanted behaviors that will be addressed in the future. So even though it is functional, it might not yet be perfectly smooth, as you'll notice with like some things that you do. Like if you've seen other tutorials, especially other tutorials that I have, when you try to add like, sprinting or maybe other animations, stuff like that, there are a little bit of hiccups that you may have seen, like when your character tries to steer their body to like a, predicted rotation or trajectory, stuff like that, right? So that's pretty much what this is going on about. So let's go ahead and into the next part, since we did go over the get desired facing. Before I get into all the settings regarding steering, let's go ahead and plug these up and actually like get some stuff going before I go over what everything else does, right? So with the get desired facing, is that this is calculating the target rotation that the steering node should aim toward. This ensures that the character turns toward a future direction based on predictive movement rather than just reacting to the current orientation. So with that, we're going to plug it in there, and I'm going to grab my note. Oop, did not mean to grab that, and place my note in there, and then just move that up ever so slightly. And then the next part, what's funny is that we can go ahead and just go over here and you can grab these if you want. However, I'm not going to do that just because I do have some notes that I do have with this. So I'm trying to keep them like stacked up. So what I'm going to do is copy them from the GASP project that I have in my other screen, just so we can go over them. So basically, just to kind of recap what it's doing, is we're getting the node context from the input of our blend stack, and then we're getting the current animation being played and the playback time, or the current time of being played, of that animation. So we're going to feed this in the get current anim asset, and then the time into the current anim asset time. So what this is essentially doing is that it supplies the steering node with information about the animation that is currently active and how far along it is. Why this is important is that knowing the current animation and its timing allows the steering node to apply rotation adjustments that are synchronized with the animation state, ensuring smooth transitions and rotations. So that's why this is important to have. So go ahead and feed that into there. And then essentially we have now our key points. So I'm going to float these up real quick. And then let's go ahead and we're going to feed. We're going to control click off of this and add it into the output of the steering node. And then let's go ahead. I'm going to move this over slightly. And then I'm going to connect this into that steering node input. And then I'm going to just make some little adjustments just to prettify it up, you know. So we got that, and eventually I'll have it. There we go. All right, and then so we got that. So now I'm going to go ahead and copy the big boy Chungus note that I have, and then let me move that in there, and then we're going to talk about the orientation node. So got that. So group movement, everything looks good. Yep. There we go. All right. Move these over just because my neatness is kicking in. All right. So now with the steering node. So to go over my points, because I do have notes on these. So with what we talked about with rotation, we're using the get desired rotation, as you can see over here, because we're trying to calculate our future facing, you know, at a certain time in the future. So in our case, 0.5 seconds into the future, we're trying to get proper facing. When we're moving or when we're in the air, because that's when this gets enabled. So in doing so with our procedural target time, so as you can see right here, is that we have it at 0.2 seconds. So I believe in the game animation project, though, they do have it. Yeah. So it's only the target time that they have on pinned. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to unexpose it as pinned just to have the procedural target time and the animated target time. However, I'm still going to go over this stuff, right? So with the procedural target time, we have it at 0.2 units or 0.2 seconds. So what this means is that this specific setting specifies that the target orientation should be based on character state 0.2 seconds into the future. So as you can see with its description, the number of seconds in the future before we reach the target orientation when play animations with no rotation. But like I said, it helps us get the target's orientation on the character state 0.2 seconds in the future. So whatever state that we're in, 0.2 seconds in the future. So in simple terms is that the character looks ahead a short time to decide which way to turn, allowing for smoother and more responsive rotations. So, it's allowing our character to predict 0.2 seconds in the future, where it's like, hey, if we're about to turn like left or right, that's kind of when the arc animations play in and stuff like that, the leans and other stuff. And it predicts like a nice smooth movement, when we lean that way or do any sort of turns or rotations, etc., right? So then our target time, we also have set for 0.2 seconds or 0.2 units. So what this means is that it, kind of similar to the procedural target time, this defines the time offset, 0.2 seconds, used to sample the target orientation. So what it does is that it ensures both procedural and target sampling are aligned to predict the character's direction 0.2 seconds ahead. So as you can see, it's also useful to avoid breaking data. So then we have the animated target time, which they have it set actually to 0.5 seconds. If I remember correctly. Yes, 0.5 seconds. I had to make sure, because I was like, I thought I had it at 2 for some reason. But for the anim target time, so when we look at in here, the number of seconds in the future before we should reach the target orientation when playing animations with group motion rotation. So what it means is that this sets the target time for animations to 0.5 seconds in the future or to play out 0.5 seconds in the future. So in simple terms, when blending animations, the system looks half a second ahead to determine the character's facing direction, aiding in smoother animation transitions. So then we have root motion angle threshold. If less than this number of degrees of rotation is found over target time seconds in the current anim asset, then rotation will be added linearly to reach the target orientation. Otherwise, the root motion will be scaled to reach the target orientation over target time seconds. So, what this means and why we have it set to 1 units. So, the steering node only applies rotation adjustments if the difference between the current and target angles exceed 1 degree. So here we're looking for more of the degrees rather than like time or anything else. So if the angle threshold exceeds 1 degree, basically what it's going to try to do is adjust the rotation, or at least account for the difference in the adjustment of the rotation. So in simple terms, what it's trying to do is prevent tiny, unnecessary rotations, ensuring that only noticeable direction changes trigger steering, which will help maintain stability. So then on our disable steering below speed, they have it set to 10 in the game animation sample project, and as you can see, it says below this movement speed, based on the root motion in the animation, disable steering. So what this means is that steering adjustments are disabled when the character's movement speed is below 10 units. So in simple terms, when the character is moving slowly or standing still, steering does not make rotation adjustments, which helps avoid jitteriness and unnecessary movements. So basically kind of think about it, like in the third person default blueprint that y'all may have seen where it has like the should move, where it mentions like ground speed below a certain threshold, and if we have acceleration applied, that the ground speed, if it's less than 3, we're trying to prevent like movement or jitteriness or something like that. This is kind of similar in that aspect. We're just setting it to 10 units or like 10 centimeters per second here, or whatever the character's like in-game speed is. So then our current anim asset, basically kind of what we went over with our little comment bubble here, but just to briefly go over it again, is that this references the currently active animation asset from the locomotion blend stack. So the steering node knows which animation is playing right now, allowing it to synchronize rotation adjustments with the animation state. And then with the current anim asset time, is that it retrieves the current playback time of the active animation asset, and in simple terms, provides the steering node with animation about how far along the animation is, ensuring the rotation adjustments align correctly with the animation's progress. So now let's get into the filtering part. So the filtering I found was pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and make the adjustments real quick before I go over each one of them. So with the enable target smoothing, they do have that as true. And then for the target stiffness, they have it at 700 units. So with enable target smoothing, as you can see, if I hover over any of these, that they don't actually give me anything, but with rough ass research in regards to like finding this, what this means, enable target smoothing, is that smoothing the target rotation, we've enabled it, right? So the steering node will gradually adjust the character's rotation towards the target direction instead of snapping instantly, resulting in more fluid movements. So that's why we want this turned on, so that way it smooths out and makes our movements fluid as we play out our animations and, correct our character's rotations. Then the smooth target stiffness, what this means is it determines the rigidity of the smoothing process, with higher values making the rotation adjustment more resistant to change. So, basically in simple terms, a stiffness of 700 units, as we marked it, makes the smoothing effect strong, ensuring that the character's rotation closely follows the target direction without wobbling. So, I will say that this would definitely be pretty helpful for lean offsets if y'all do have it, as well as arcs and other stuff, and stuff that we have to make rotations with our characters. That way it prevents not like wobbling. Actually smoothens out our characters like swings, leans, arcs, whatever, and actually like adjusts the the rotation rather nicely, right? So then the smooth target damping, this controls the damping or how quickly the rotation adjustments stabilize. So in simple terms, a damping value of 1 provides a balanced rate at which the character's rotation settles into the target direction, preventing overshooting and oscillations. Basically just kind of like, hey, we're too far out, or we've made like overcorrections, stuff like that. So that's what this does. And then everything else is pretty much kind of whatever. We've been over it several times with the other stuff. So basically when we look at this, when we go over all the stuff that we set up here, because like I said, in the next episode, we're going to do the last part of the steering, and then we'll be officially done with everything GASP related. So what we're trying to do is basically using the get desired facing function calculates where the character will be facing 0.5 seconds ahead based on our trajectory data that we've set up earlier in an earlier video. And then when to apply it, we've created the enable steering so it only activates, if we're moving or in the air. And so basically we apply steering adjustments. So, when these conditions are met, steering adjusts the character's rotation towards the target orientation. The adjustments are smooth to avoid abrupt changes thanks to, the enable target smoothing target stiffness, and smooth target damping. It synchronizes with our animations and takes into account the current playback time of the animation that is in play, assuring that rotation adjustments align seamlessly with the animation state. So in doing that, putting all this together, is that the character should smoothly turn towards the predicted future direction, enhancing the realism and responsiveness of movement. So that is pretty much it for this version of steering. So when I pull up the game animation sample project, basically it's going to be similar, where I could do it in this video, but I want to save that as the last kind of finale, kind of hoorah, because I haven't seen anything else that we really need to do. But I'm gonna do the finale of the steering video because I want to get into other stuff, guys, but I will also do the conversions and stuff like that with the databases and just hack them on as I come back to them. But I want to just leave this as the finale because it's pretty easy when you look at it to figure out. But again, we're gonna go over what this does because I want to give y'all the most optimal notes for this part, because now that we have went over this steering and what it's doing, you can essentially understand what it's doing. However, you'll notice a procedural target time of whatever number that is. I think 1 million. Yeah, so we just got a 1 million there. So, if you play back what I said about the procedural target time, is that we're trying, I guess what it's doing is basing the target orientation or a get desired facing 1 million seconds into the future. So I guess with the turn, I don't know why it's set to that. I have to do more. That's another reason why I want to leave it to the next videos, because I have to figure out why they put it to 1 million. Because that's just funny to me. It might have something to do with the turn in place animations, or at least, let me see right here. The second steering node is needed for turn in places, since certain properties are on this node are not yet pinnable. They will be removed, and this will be removed in future releases. Well, yeah, so it does have something to do with the turn in place, but I want to try to get accurate notes for you guys. So the finale video will be a very simple one. So what I will probably do for the finale video, guys, is I will probably also show you how to do the conversions of motion matching databases, or how you can put them together yourself. Because for the most part, like, let me go ahead and move that over, and we can go ahead and, compile and save. So one of the things that I didn't go over in the other video, guys, because I was kind of excited how just the stuff was magically working, is that if you look at our character, you will notice that, like, arms and fingers are messed up with this, and that's just because we don't have the proper body or the actual correct mannequin set up and playing. So if we do want to adjust those, I believe I had a video or whatever that I did that shows you how you would convert them, or at least in my previous video I did mention how you would convert it. So I believe I did, can't remember, but essentially you would just want to fix it here under characters, UEFN mannequin, animations, motion matching data. And then you're just going to convert these chooser tables and stuff like that to have the right here under the type class of ABP Manny. However, that's not going to necessarily, I did not mean to minimize that. That is not going to fix the fingers and arms and stuff like that, because they need to be retargeted animations. Because if I bring up the game animation sample project, so when I pull this up, or actually, let me do a side by side so y'all can kind of see it. You can see how the arms look, right? So if you do, you can see how his arm looks right here and in here, and how it's trying to form his arms to be like that animation, and then how his fingers look, you know, here, where it's trying to force that adjustment onto Manny's hands. So that's why it just looks bad. If you're already familiar with how to retarget animations, it's literally as simple as that. It's just that you have to do the work now of making the motion matching databases, basically just recopying what they have, you know, listed in here, just over underneath the just the normal UE5 mannequin stuff. Just you're basically copying it, retargeting the animation, stuff like that. But like I said, guys, just for the finale video, what we can do is I'll go over the steering, just because, like, again, I wanted to get proper notes for that. And then we'll just do like a couple, we'll just do some basic ones, because just to kind of show you and kind of like get that going. And then that way you can kind of understand the simple picture and then how it looks in the bigger scheme of things. So the next video will probably be an hour, just because it's gonna, or hopefully not an hour, but I want to keep it to roughly 30 minutes or so, or around that time, just because we're gonna do like the very simple stuff like I mentioned. So, but for the most part, guys, we are essentially done. Like, this is actually pretty good considering everything that we did. So, oh yeah, we never ever set this up. So if you guys ever wanted to see the debug, you would just go back in here to the third person template, and you would go to the event graph, and then you're gonna scroll down. Where did I put it? To here, to the try-traversal action, or not even the try-traversal action, but we're going to get a command that's out of here since we set all that up. So if you did follow along in this series, my first videos and stuff like that, basically what I forgot about was that we were just going to copy this, and we're going to put it in the console command down here. And I'm just going to click on it just to make sure to get that. So now we have it set up there. And then you're just going to type in 1 and then hit enter. And then now when we play, yeah, you can now see that we get the data for it. It tells you exactly what animation is playing out. It gives you all the details of the, you know, the walls and stuff like that. So that way, you know, you can see here that's supposed to be a vault, hence why the character is jumping because of what he's trying to do. But now, for some reason, a vault just likes to trigger jumping on the blocks now, so it is just kind of weird. But, you know, with everything that we've done and how things have set up, what I can also do as like another video because it technically is more of an animation thing than a character blueprint thing, is go over setting up the traversal and montages and stuff like that. So I could also do that too as a video, but I'll do that after the finale video, just to give you guys something extra. But if you did see my other video, I really do want to get into the Combat Fury tutorial with GASP. I want to set that up with you guys if y'all manage to get it. I also want to work on your first 60 minutes of motion matching, to just get that going, to teach all the basics setup of motion matching. And then on top of that, I think I am going to just make a Pong tutorial, but I'm not going to do that as like a daily, 2-day, 3-day release kind of thing. I'm just going to make that behind the scenes and just post it all at once for beginners, because I can't stress enough how many times I've reiterated Pong. I've went over and recreated Pong 7 times because I just keep getting better with the stuff as I do this research for motion matching, UE5 in general, how stuff is set up, stuff like that. I cannot stress that Pong is like the most excellent starter game to get yourself started with Unreal Engine 5. I cannot stress that enough. But enough of me babbling on that. I'll just do a behind the scenes tutorial push on that one for anybody to watch at any point in time, as well as for beginners, stuff like that. So that'll be something for another time, but thank you guys for tuning into this video. I hope you found it educational and whatnot. If you did find it enjoyable, please, check out my other videos as well as my future videos to come. And also too, guys, I did want to mention, I didn't mention it in the beginning of the video, but I have placed it around. I even made a community post. I have created a Discord just for people to join and have fun, try to learn something from each other, take part in game jams, stuff like that. I'm trying to make it like a pleasant experience. I know that there's been other, Discord channels out there that already do this kind of thing, but I figured I have nothing to really lose in making one. So if you're interested in joining, I would highly appreciate you joining. However, as a disclaimer, I do have a verification system up. It's not trying to verify your identity or anything. It's just basically proving that you are human, because, I don't want my server to get spammed with like bots, raids, other stuff. So there's a simple verification system that will take you to like a third-party thing just to verify that you are human. Basically, it's a CAPTCHA thing. And then once you're verified, you're going to get a verified role that allows you access to everything else in the server, where I try to make posts and give people stuff, or anything that I find interesting, I'm going to post in there, stuff like that. So I would, greatly appreciate it if y'all wanted to join me and stuff like that, but you don't have to. I'm not forcing you, but it would be cool. And if you do like it, you do meet some cool people on there, whatnot, I recommend, taking part in some of the game jams that I've listed, or at least, find a game jam from the calendar stuff that I've listed in the Discord server, and just, kind of have fun with it and go along with it, stuff like that. But again, that's up for y'all to decide. But other than that, ladies and germs, y'all have a great rest of your day and take care.